But this was a pretty good segment, particularly given the fact that Donald Trump has been screaming his love for the African American community. And in particular, he should be loving his black Republican community. But somehow, some of the brothers aren't feeling the love.
Over the course of his campaign, Donald Trump's off-the-cuff remarks have targeted a rather diverse cross-section of people in the United States. Immigrants, Muslim Americans, women, disabled Americans, and Gold Star military families. All have been subject to the Trump treatment. But this week, his stick-to-the-script teleprompter speeches have name-checked a group of Americans who've gotten less attention from Trump on the stump.
African Americans, African American, African American, African American, African American, African Americans, African American, African American.
Trump's week of shout-outs mark an exponential increase in public appeals to African Americans. And since he singled out a lone supporter at a rally as my African American. But for black Republicans, the quality of those appeals is no substitute for quality. And frustrated with the Trump campaign's failure to meaningfully engage African American voters, they don't necessarily think Trump's shout-out adds up to much. It's a criticism that has plagued the Trump campaign since last year, when Trump claimed he'd won the endorsement of 100 black ministers from across the country. As it turned out, the optics were more of an illusion because several of those ministers who were named on the list of endorsers not only did not endorse Trump, but told NPR if they met with him at all, it would be to air grievances with his campaign and his rhetoric. And this week, BuzzFeed reports that as Trump appeared to embrace black voters, his campaign was alienating those who were most likely to give him their support. Sean P. Jackson, the chairman of the Black Republican Caucus of Florida, had been one of Trump's more ardent African-American backers.
Yeah, Sean P. Jackson was on the Roland Martin show about 2 weeks ago, and he was extolling the virtues of Donald Trump like you thought Donald Trump was the second coming of Jesus Christ. Well, now check out what Donald Trump's campaign, check out how they treated Mr. Jackson. I'm wondering what he's thinking now.
But according to BuzzFeed, he was told by Trump's Florida strategist that Trump didn't need his classification of people to get elected during the primary. And to add insult to injury, BuzzFeed reports that Jackson was recently snubbed at a Trump event and kicked out by the Secret Service. Ouch. Up next, more with my...
All right, so now I'm wondering what type of virtues Mr. Jackson would extol.
African American communities have suffered under Democratic control. To those I say the following: what do you have to lose by trying something new like Trump?
Welcome back to AM Joy. Donald Trump asked that question yesterday in Dimondale, a Michigan suburb where the African American population is just 1%. Which leads me to another question, a variation on the classic philosophical quandary about the tree falling in the forest. If Donald Trump makes a speech to black people where there are none around to hear it, did he make a sound? Joining me now, Leah Reitberger, author of the great book, The Loneliness of the Black Republican, Pragmatic Politics and the Pursuit of Power, and Pastor Darryl Scott, CEO of Donald Trump's National Diversity Coalition. And
yeah, and this is one of the guys that was at that meeting of the 100 black pastors that was supposedly going to endorse Trump, which turned into a fiasco. But Darryl Scott, he's just a phony black preacher that's in another whole category by himself.
I'll start with you on that, Pastor Scott. Donald Trump has made these sort of overt appeals to African Americans now in 2 successive speeches, but in the 2 communities where he was speaking, there was 1% approximately black population. Why is he making those appeals in front of exclusively white audiences, or almost exclusively white audiences?
Because he does not want to make those appeals in front of an exclusively or predominantly black audience. That's an easy answer. But Mr. Scott obviously is going to make an excuse, such as he doesn't have any control over the venues that he uses.
Well, Donald Trump's meetings are never for any exclusive demographic. When Donald Trump speaks,
with him speaking to African Americans and asking for them to give him a chance, I think that is called speaking to an exclusive demographic.
it's national, and so the choice of venue, you know, the venue had been decided months back, and for Donald Trump to choose a venue is not like Hillary, who can show up at a high school gym, and if something comes up, she can just go to another gym. You know, he has to choose.
That's not what Mr. Trump said before. Mr. Trump has bragged about the fact that he has picked a venue and then found out that the crowd was going to be larger, and then went to a larger venue, and then found out that the crowd was going to be larger than that venue could hold, and then went to a third venue. Now, in this particular case, Mr. Trump held this event in Diamondale, which is about 10 minutes away from Lansing, which he could have easily arranged to get the University of Michigan in East Lansing. He could have gotten their basketball facility probably at a moment's notice if he wanted to, but no, excuses are fine.
These venues in advance, there's a lot that goes into it because they have to accommodate thousands, but he's aware of the fact that whenever he speaks, it gets national coverage. So the fact that he spoke in that smaller venue with that particular demographic did not affect the fact that just about every African-American person in America heard about it and knows about it, and we're still talking about it today.
Yeah, and just about every black person in America knows about it, is talking about it, and most are pissed off that he was talking to 99% white people about black issues. Oh, and let me back up. When I said University of Michigan at East Lansing, I actually should have said University of, not University of, Michigan State University.
And so the choice of venue is inconsequential almost.
And you don't think that he could have in advance chosen to accept the invitations of the NAACP, the Urban League, or the National Association of Black Journalists?
Well, I know for a fact that the NAACP meeting was right around the RNC, and he was gearing up for the RNC.
No, the NAACP meeting took place at the same time as the RNC convention was held. But the thing about that was, it was basically an hour's plane ride on Trump's private jet, and they would have been more than happy to arrange a time for him in the morning so that he wouldn't have had to take any time away from his afternoon or evening speeches, appearances, etc. But that was pointed out to him, and he declined anyway.
And so that's the reason why there was a scheduling conflict there. The National Association of Black Journalists and even with the Urban League, by the time they came across Mr. Trump's desk, he had already had other events on his calendar.
That's not true. They went to him several months prior, offering an invitation for him to appear before them, and the honest truth is he never answered them.
Again, you have to understand, Donald Trump is like a cultural phenomenon right now. I mean, he's attracting crowds that rock stars attract, so it's not so easy for him to change venues or make decisions to
well, he's
cancel
attracting
here
crowds
and go
that don't have a
there.
lot of African Americans in them. I want to get Leah Ricker in on this, because when Donald Trump was in Michigan speaking to the whole world, as Darryl Scott had to say, the way he spoke about African Americans was interesting. Let's play Donald Trump in Michigan talking about African Americans as refugees.
Hillary Clinton would rather provide a job to a refugee from overseas than to give that job to unemployed African-American youth in cities like Detroit who have become refugees in their own country.
I mean, in your view, is speaking about African Americans as refugees, as people from Detroit, black people from Detroit as refugees, is that a message that seems like it would be effective with black people?
So it's absolutely not a message that would be effective with black people. I mean, we're already talking about a candidate that has managed to alienate a good portion of black voters in this country, and now we have a doubling down of that. And so what it does is it pushes black voters away, even further away. I mean, part of the problem here is that you have a message, right, that is coming from an insincere messenger, and then you don't have any policies and you don't have any programs or politics to actually back it up. This is the kind of thing that we've seen over the past, 52 years that Republican presidential candidates have tried that essentially have not worked and have actually hurt the party in the long run.
Yeah, and one other, I'm going to play one other clip of Donald Trump in Michigan, Pastor Scott, and he's talking about black problems. Now, he's using things like but again, he's speaking to an audience that was not African Americans at all. It was essentially a white audience. But this is what he said about black people and their problems in Michigan.
You're living in poverty, your schools are no good, you have no jobs, 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose?
I mean, Pastor Scott, you know as a black man that is not the reality. Every African American is not living in poverty with terrible schools. There are plenty of African Americans, yourself included, who do quite well. Why would he speak about African Americans in the community as if everyone is poor, everyone is down and out?
Well, he's speaking to the ones that are in that respect. I've had a number of private conversations with Mr. Trump. When I speak for him, I don't speak as a surrogate. I speak as a friend. And I've had many conversations going back years with him about the condition of African Americans, in the oppressed segment of African Americans in America. In fact, there is a segment of us that refer to ourselves as being oppressed. I mean, I've had my critics say to me, hey man, you're siding with our oppressor. So there is a large segment of African Americans who look upon ourselves as an oppressed society.
Let me ask you a question about that, because you say...
He's playing word games. He is playing word games that he's trying to contort. It's not going to work.
That you're a friend, and you say that people you talk with look upon themselves as oppressed. One of the issues that African Americans have faced over the years is housing discrimination. Why do you suppose your friend Donald Trump engaged in massive housing discrimination when, as a landlord in New York, who would not rent to black people? Have you ever talked to him about that?
That was an accusation. That was an accusation.
He settled the case.
Listen,
he settled the case with the government.
I know banks. I know banks that I did business with.
All right, here we go. Now he's changing the subject. And for those of you who aren't aware of it, Donald Trump settled a case where he was being sued by the Department of Justice for housing discrimination against black people. He reached the settlement with them. They had to turn around and go back to court because he violated the terms of the settlement agreement.
There were banks in Ohio, banks nationwide that were accused of redlining that denied it, but they settled because. So
you're saying Donald Trump did not commit?
So
what about accusing the president of the United States?
Doesn't mean.
Settling,
because you settle doesn't mean you're saying you're guilty.
And what about calling the president?
That he's denied from then until now.
But the government thought it was quite a strong case, and he thought it was a strong enough case that he had to settle.
The government has strong cases.
So you're denying that he did that. Let me just, we're running out of time, Leah. So do you think? Yeah, well, he did settle the case. Leah, do you think that Donald Trump, just as somebody that's got that history, the birtherism, the housing discrimination cases, is this somebody whose message to have? Don't tell me that you agree with the birtherism, sir. I hope you're not going to say that.
No, what I'm saying, what I'm about to say is the birther issue came out of Hillary Clinton's campaign.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't,
yes,
sir.
It did.
No.
Yes, it did.
That's just actually factually wrong. You can't. You know what? Even a pastor cannot just make things up on the show. Leah, sir. No, it was not. You know what? Even a pastor cannot make things up. This is part of the problem. This is part of the problem. You've taken us off track. I wish we had more time. No, it didn't.
So
you know what? We're out of time. Sir, I respect you as a pastor, and as a Catholic faith, but you're not going to come on and just make things up. Leah Reid and Pastor Darryl Scott, segment's over, sir. Thank you very much. After the break, the 2016 Rio Olympics.
That's the thing about Darryl Scott. He'll keep talking and talking and talking, trying to overtalk people to the point where you basically have to cut him off. So anyway, this is the end of the segment, and Joy's going to give her guest an opportunity to respond to the last comments.
All right, before we get to Who Won the Week today, Leah Wright Rigueur was shorted on time in that last segment. She had another point that she wanted to make, so we're bringing her back. Leah, what point did you want to make about black outreach and Donald Trump?
So my whole point about black outreach and Donald Trump is you can't be serious about black outreach, and you can't even say the phrase or accept the idea that Black Lives Matter. I mean, it's a significant problem. And so in order for this to be real and for this actually for black voters to take this seriously, Donald Trump actually has to mean what he says and actually address issues that are important to African Americans that go beyond kind of superficial platitudes and things like that.
Yeah, and I think it wouldn't hurt if he is in the apology business to go back and maybe, I don't know, take back birtherism. That actually might be a good idea too. Thank you, Leah. We loved having you on today. We definitely want to bring you back and read her book. It's really terrific. All right.
All right, so that completes that particular segment.